And it's time to talk a little high school basketball as we kick off the 2025-26 season. As we were asked by Just a Game Fieldhouse and Just a Game Pod to put together some interviews this year, and really looking forward to it. Players, coaches, we got a gamut of things that we're going to run this year, and we're going to start off with our good friend Matt Klarner from Xavier High School, heading into his 15th season, 298 wins and 71 losses in those 15 years. Coach, congratulations on another great season. A year ago, a second place finish in the Bay Conference, 12-2, 21-7 overall, losing in the sectional semis to Little Chute. But how's your off season been, and how are the boys looking in the gym?
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Good to see you again. Good to be back in the gym, hearing the squeaking of the shoes, hearing the bouncing of the balls. And I appreciate you mentioning last year's team. Last year we were definitely an underdog team, definitely a team that wasn't a ton expected out of, and really appreciate the work that our seniors did last year to kind of uphold the standard and tradition of our program, and appreciate the work that our young guys did to rise up when a lot of those names were not household names and not common names, and they kind of rose up and put themselves in a position where we were able to compete. And as you said, we were able to win 21 games, win a regional championship. It was a phenomenal season, super fun year, and great group of kids. And the off season was awesome, refreshing, relaxing. As you know, I got family and young kids, and got a ton of time away from the gym and doing lots of other fun stuff. And then when the winter comes around, you want to get back in there and you want to start working on hoops again, and get a team ready for competition and ready to represent our school and represent our community again this winter, and excited to do that.
You look at this roster, and your program has been so successful over the years. It's just kind of a reloading situation. Traditionally strong teams in any sport, they don't have a lot of roller coaster, right? It's very consistent across the board. And that's kind of the situation with your basketball program. Each and every year, you just keep bringing back kids and you keep developing kids. I know you're a firm believer in developing talent. And a lot of times it starts during that sophomore year. A lot of these kids become 3-year starters. But the one I want to talk about first on your roster, obviously a team leader, one of the best players possibly in the state. I think this kid's good enough to be an all-state honorable mention, if not better. And I think you believe in that as well. And it's Logan Ramczyk, the junior, almost 20 points a game, 5.5 assists. Let's start with him and just talk about how he's developed his game. 3rd year now as a varsity starter.
Yeah, super proud of Logan. Great kid from a great family, and just has great work ethic. And just last year as a sophomore, one of the reasons our team was successful and kind of smashed through all kind of the ceiling that other people had set for us was his emergence as a leader, his emergence as a point guard and a creator, his emergence as a defensive player and a defensive stopper. And I think he just kind of has high goals, he has high expectations for himself, and he crushed it last year. He had a great season. And I think the fun part about that is, I think when people see him play this year, they're going to see that he's better. He's stronger, he's smarter, he's better. He's got a full year of varsity minutes under his belt and being a varsity leader and an all-conference player. And he's got another level that he's going to take us to. So I feel really good about where he's at. He had a great first week of practice from a leadership perspective, and obviously in terms of his play on the floor as well. So really excited and in good hands with him as one of our go-to guys this year.
And then we got to talk about Kyler Bleck, because this kid, senior guard this year, I want you to talk about his development. I just got done talking about how you develop guys. I think Kyler Bleck, probably one of those players, and you would probably agree, from the time he's been a freshman, sophomore, and now a senior, he may have shown more growth than anybody in your program in recent memory. I mean, he had some huge shots, including a big one against Laconia, obviously, in the regional championship game. But talk about Kyler Bleck and just what he brings to the table. 10 points a game last year, 3 assists. I'm expecting those numbers to even bump up a little bit this year.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Kyler's a great kid, tough kid, really plays hard, is super intense, super competitive. And I think you're right. A year ago, no one even knew his name. He was just a kid from the JV team who was who was joining the varsity roster, and all of a sudden he's starting for us, and he worked his way into major minutes. And as the year went on, I think his role just continued to grow. And if you look at his scoring average, like early in the season, he was averaging 4 or 5 points a game, and all of a sudden it was 7 or 8 points a game. And at the end of the year, he was averaging 10 points a game. And as you know, Craig, you're pretty good at math, I think. You know that if you average 10 points a game, that doesn't mean that if you start at 4 points a game, you can't just score 10 to get to bring that average up to 10. You got to score above 10 to get the average to raise up to 10. And Kyler had a lot of double-digit games for us at the end of the season. And as you said, made the biggest shot of our season to bring home the regional championship in that game last year. So again, a lot of maturity and growth in his game, as you said, and now as a senior, seems very determined to be, you know, one of the top kids in the conference on the offensive end and one of the top kids in the conference on the defensive end.
And then one of your intriguing juniors, this kid here played pretty significant minutes last year at times. He ended up playing 26 games, now a junior. But Caden Schuler, a kid that's got some decent size, pretty athletic, averaged about 4.5 points a game. Really looking for his game. I could see him taking off kind of like Kyler Bleck last year in his junior year. I think, how does Caden Schuler, obviously a little bit different player than Kyler. Kyler more of a point guard. But talk about Caden and his skill set. He can get to the rim. He can shoot it, handle the ball. But talk about this junior. I think he's set up for a very nice year and could be a key component for you guys.
Yeah, Caden's a really versatile kid. He just he brings it to us inside. He brings it to us outside, and I think he's really comfortable on the perimeter. And what he's worked on a lot the last 2 years is the ability to cut through the lane, catch the ball inside, draw a foul, finish. And I think, you know, his game continues to evolve in that area. And one of the things we talked about with him last year and really into the summer was like we need him to become that two-way player as well. Like last year, you know, he's a ball player. He's a gamer. He goes out there and he plays. He does his stuff. He's not afraid of the moment. He makes big shots. But now we said, hey, you're a junior now. You got to be able to guard at a high level, and that's been the challenge for him. He's definitely a little stronger this year, and definitely his intensity and focus on the defensive area has been higher as a junior than a sophomore. And again, that's what we kind of expect our kids to do, is to go from being that inexperienced, wide-eyed sophomore to being a comfortable, confident junior. And I think Caden's going to really play well for us this year.
And I think one of your other kids, I want to talk about Grant Newman. He is a senior. I like to call certain players garbage guys, right? They win the 50-50 balls. They hustle. They give you a ton of energy off the bench. And that's exactly what Grant Newman did last year. Only averaged 4 points a game. But you got to disregard numbers and statistics sometimes, because he gave you a lot more than maybe just a couple of buckets per game. I think Grant Newman is a physical basketball player. He can give you a lot of energy. A senior, now he's much more experienced. Talk about his game a little bit. And again, good size, 6'2", but very solidly built.
Yeah, and Grant's gotten a lot stronger too. I think you're right about him kind of just being that kind of garbage man, or you know, picking up easy points and loose points last year. But I also feel like the evolution now goes to, hey, well now I'm a senior, and now I've got to be able to do a little bit more than that. So hopefully we're still going to get those scrappy points and those transition points and those offensive rebounds, and hopefully that's all still part of his game. But we're also going to need him to step up and make some big shots. We're going to need to be a little bit more of a focal point on the offensive end. And he's looked good. He's looks really solid, and it looks like he's going to take another step this year.
You know, we haven't talked about your 3 seniors that graduated. Obviously, you got to fill some shoes. Luke Olhafen, Cole Hippus, Joe Gallucci. And as we look at this roster, we've been talking about the experienced guys coming back. There is one kid on your roster that played very limited last year as a freshman, but we got to see him a little bit later in the year. I want you to talk about this kid because I like what I saw, the little bit that I saw from him. A very solid 6'3" sophomore this year, Ben Capel. I think he is going to give you guys some presence maybe down into the post that you maybe not have had a lot of in the past. But talk about his game and how he will fit into the rotation this year as a sophomore.
Yeah, I think that's a big question mark for our team. You know, our interior size and toughness. You know, we lost 2 kids who gave us interior size and two kids who gave us toughness. And I think that's something that we're going to have to establish. You know, if you cannot rebound, if you cannot defend the paint, if you don't have anyone out there screening bodies and attacking the basket, then obviously your offense can become one-dimensional as well. And I think Ben's one of those kids that we're counting on to take a step there. Again, you said he's a sophomore. He doesn't have a ton of experience. He missed the beginning of his freshman year with an injury, so he's really only played a couple months of high school basketball. But at the same time, we think physically he's in a great spot to help us. And the focus for him is now let's get the skills there. Let's get to a point where our free throw percentage is rising and our finishing percentage is rising, and we're cutting down turnovers and all those things. So he's working on the varsity speed, varsity skills, and adjusting to varsity play. And in the meanwhile, has had a great attitude and has worked really hard and brought that physicality that we know he can bring.
Let's talk about some other kids that didn't really play a lot of minutes last year, but a couple of key juniors, guys that could give you some minutes off the bench. Some of your starters get in foul trouble. I think you're going to look to Quinn Comerford and Colby Donemeyer this year as being contributors. Maybe talk about those two kids a little bit. And a lot of times what happens is you see these guys in practice every single day. We may not see them as much because their time is limited, but talk about them and what you've seen in the offseason this year and how they're coming along.
Yeah, obviously you need secondary scorers, out on the wing and in the perimeter, and we know that Quinn was kind of right on the cusp of the rotation last year and played a lot of games and contributed in spots. But now we need him to step up and be a consistent contributor, and we certainly expect him to do that. Colby is a toughness and hustle guy, right? He just gives you energy and intensity, and he's in the right place at the right time and has a high basketball IQ, so we definitely expect him to contribute for us. And then we have a senior, Evan Whitman, who's kind of a lankier wing who can attack the rim and can shoot the ball from the perimeter as well. So I think we got some guys there. And, we just got to find some consistency from those secondary scorers. And those are guys that we're hoping they're going to be able to step up into those roles and produce and hopefully become the well-known names, even though people don't know who they are right now.
Yeah, and speaking of that, names, there's a few on my list that we know nothing about, or at least I do not. And this is my favorite part is who's that next Kyler Black, right? Who's the next Sam Pfefferly, maybe? I could go on and on with guys that have come through your program. Let's just go down the list because, like you said, Evan Whitman, somebody that didn't play last year, decides to come out this year as a center or as a senior, excuse me. Let's talk about David Hanna Jr., Owen McGreevy, another junior, and then a sophomore, Ryan Hendricks. Maybe talk about those three because those are brand new names and talk about what those guys might be able to contribute this year.
Yeah, well, actually, the other name to add to that list, Craig, is Osazi Fournier. I mean, Osazi is another name that got a little bit of varsity tick last year and is a hungry, athletic kid. And you can see that in this first week of tryouts. You can see that he has he's bound and determined to take the experience that he had last year and make it pay off for him this year. So I think he's a guy that is going to, be on the people's watch list and be on people's scouting reports this year because he is really contributing in our practice this first week and looks like a different player than he was a year ago. And then, as you mentioned, David Hahn and Owen McGreevy, two kids that give us some size and length, and they got to develop some skills and they got to get themselves ready for varsity competition. But these are two juniors who have some size, which is something that we need. And I think they're going to make our practices better. And hopefully, as the season goes on, continue to rise and challenge for game opportunities. And then I guess the last one you said there was Rylan, and Rylan Hendricks is a sophomore, played in our JV team last year as a freshman, about a 6'2" guard and kind of growing into his body still, and hopefully we'll be filling out and getting stronger this year. Shoots the ball really well, super high basketball IQ, and just really plays his role really, really well. So I think there's just a lot of pieces there of guys that can contribute, guys that can make plays. I like our depth. And we know that in order to compete in our conference and in our really hard schedule, we're going to have these guys step up, and different guys are going to have to step up. We know some of those experienced guys will be bringing it every night, but we need those secondary and tertiary guys to step up and make plays if we're going to reach our potential this year.
And we are visiting with head coach Matt Klarner of the Xavier Hawks here on the Justapod podcast. Glad to have him along and just kind of breaking down his roster as they are getting set for their season opener Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving, traditionally a home game, and this one will be against Kettle Moraine Lutheran. Coach, let's get into your conference here a little bit. This Bay Conference, suddenly we see a little shuffling. West De Pere, longtime rivals, of course. It's been your ball club and the Phantoms for many years battling for the top spot in the Bay Conference. West De Pere, of course, did win the Bay Conference last year. They leave Fox Valley Lutheran, a team that you're more than familiar with. You play every year, non-conference. This is a team that has been a crosstown rival for a good number of years. But Winneconne also comes over into the league. So it turns out to be a 9-team league this year. Let's talk about this league and just maybe your initial thoughts on those changes that I just mentioned.
Well, I think, the names are going to change, but the Bay Conference is going to remain one of the top leagues in Northeast Wisconsin, regardless. I mean, obviously, West De Pere has become just a dynasty in terms of the talent that they're bringing through and the athletes they're bringing through their school. And they had definitely, outgrown the rest of the Bay, and they were about 3 times our size the last few years in terms of enrollment and athletes. So obviously, probably a smart move on their part to request to move out to play against some schools that are more closer to their size, and that certainly makes sense. But you bring in 2 schools which we have great traditions with. We played Winneconne for years. We played FVL for years. Winneconne has a really strong team this year. Bring all their kids back from last year, and they've got some really nice young talent as well. So they're a team that is definitely on the rise and will be, a great addition and be right in the mix. I think, they come in this first year and they're not going to be at the bottom of the league. They're going to be right in the mix with the top teams in the league. And FVL obviously is a team that's a strong Division II school, like a lot of these base schools, bigger enrollment and a lot of bodies, a lot of athletes. And, they're obviously a team that we have been playing, and now we're just going to play twice. So bring back that old rivalry, which will be neat, and play those guys home and home. So great battles with those teams, obviously. The Bay Conference is going to be really, really strong this year, and it's going to be a lot of fun nights in the gym.
Yeah, no question about it. You look at the Wisconsin Basketball Yearbook put up by Mark Miller, and he lists in here Winneconne fifth, but don't be surprised if they finish higher, as they think they could be one of the more explosive teams in the conference and probably a surprise team. I think you got to start at the top, and you guys will be right there, of course. But Seymour is really a roster that's loaded with a lot of experience. They bring back a ton of talent. FVL number 2, Xavier number 3 is the early rankings. And New London, a good number 4, by the way. Joseph Daly, of course, player of the year, shared that with Logan Ramczyk last year in the conference. Maybe talk about Seymour. I think that team, boy, you talk about some battles over the years. You two guys have gone at it. Obviously, Bobby Kukta, a tremendous basketball coach, especially on the defensive end. But talk about the Thunder a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, you start with the other teams you mentioned, like, Menasha's got a really strong junior class. They're going to be a really tough team to beat. New London's bringing their entire roster back, and they were, battled with every single team last year. So they're a team that should be definitely on the rise and amongst the top teams in the conference. And then, you just mentioned Seymour. Last year I thought they were one of the best teams in the state. I don't think there's any question about it. We watched them play several times, and obviously had to go against them twice. They were one of the most talented teams in the state. Did not have a senior on their roster, and so now you take that team and you flip it over, and now you're, now you have a couple seniors and some younger guys too. But they're bringing the entire roster back of that team, and they are definitely one of the top 5 teams in Division III for sure. So it's a loaded league. It's going to be tough battles every night, and I want our guys, and I hope our guys are going to be prepared to do that, so that we can battle every night and find a way to get some wins there, because there's not going to be an easy night there, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun, super competitive, and our guys, of course, embrace that, and we're looking forward to the challenge.
Yeah, it's always a fun time catching up with you, Coach. Should be an exciting season. Maybe leave us with this. Keys to having a successful season. I know these keys probably don't change a whole lot from years gone by. Like every year, it's pretty much the same. But maybe give us a couple of nuggets, and then I'm not asking for predictions, but maybe give us a player on your roster, and we've gone down the roster here just a short time ago. Maybe give us that player that might exceed expectations a little bit. Might be one of those guys that, wow, at the end of the year, you're going to say, okay, he made the greatest leap on our entire roster from November all the way through March. So maybe give us that, and then just a couple of keys to be where you guys need to be in the Bay Conference and just overall to make a push deep into the postseason?
Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is, the big question mark, the big thing that everybody says, when they look at our program from a distance is, what are you going to do around the basket? How are you going to defend the interior? How are you going to rebound? And honestly, I've been doing this a long time, and those are the same questions we've had many, many years. We haven't been rolling out with 6'6", 6'7" across the front line. That's just not, the players we've been given. You got to play the hand you're dealt, and you got to make the most of the kids you got. So like that's a question mark for sure. And that's obviously a key is how our guys figure it out. We want to be one of the top rebounding teams in the state, and we know we don't have the size that equates to that, but we're going to show the toughness and the heart and the technique to get that done. So I'm excited to see our guys rise up there. And I think the other, probably key is, last year we had a young and experienced backcourt that had a lot of learning to do. And I think we're expecting that to be different this year. We're expecting that we're going to have more experience there. We should have the advantage now with the strong backcourt guys who have played a full year of varsity ball or more and are ready to lead us in those tight games or those close games down the stretch and take care of the ball or make the big shot. So hopefully those are two things that will be keys for us as we go. And as for a couple of names, I already mentioned Osazi. I think he is definitely a guy who's jumped out to me early on in our tryout process. And I think the work going behind the scenes that Quinn Comerford has done should not go unnoticed. He has worked his tail off and has put himself in position to really have a key role for us. So hopefully those are two guys who become household names by the time January hits.
And one of the things we haven't really talked a lot about is shooting the basketball. You guys, I've been covering your team for a number of years, and I really never thought about this much. And then I think you might have brought it up one time. You guys don't take any 2-point shots unless it's a layup. You guys rely heavily on the 3-point line, and so do other teams. But your team historically has been known to be very effective, and it's a high volume total from beyond the arc, but it's pretty simple math. You're a math teacher. 3 is better than 2. You don't have to make as many shots from 3 as you do from 2. Maybe talk about that philosophy as we close out here visiting with head coach Matt Klarner of the Xavier Hawks today.
Yeah, I think where we had dug this up somewhere, but it was, in the last 14 years, I think we made more 3-point shots than any team in the state. So we made the most threes in the state over the last 14 years. And that's just a thing where we work a lot on our shooting. We work a lot on our technique. We work a lot on building confidence in our shooters, and we want our guys to be able to stretch the floor. And we really feel like if you want to be an effective team, you got to have guys that can stretch the floor. Otherwise, you can't get to the basket. So, if you have big guys or you don't have big guys, if you want to get to the rim and attack, there's good athletes in our conference, good athletes up and down our schedule. Our non-conference schedule is super rugged this year. And if you want to get to the basket, you also got to make teams come out and play it, right? So you got to be able to stretch the floor on one end, hopefully make teams come out and play it, and then that gives you a chance to get to the rim. And hopefully make teams kind of pick their poison. Hey, I want to give up an inside shot, or I want to give up an outside shot, and we're not worried about which one we get. We're just worried about getting good ones, playing with confidence, and hopefully the work our guys do in the off season to prepare themselves to make those big shots. Hopefully that pays off this winter when it counts.
One other thing that I just thought of, and you can comment very briefly on it as we wrap up here with Matt Klarner, a little season preview of Xavier Hawk basketball. Why don't you talk about your coaching staff? We've seen a little bit of fluctuation the last couple of years, couple of changes here and there. Why don't you quickly just breeze through your coaching staff and what it looks like this year?
Yeah, I was told by multiple people that our coaching positions do not pay enough. That's what I was told. We're apparently, I guess we got to start handing out those Big Ten or NBA type contracts. So I'm still waiting for that check to clear, and when it does, that'll be great. But until then, no, life. Honestly though, life happens, right? Life happens, and our coaches work so hard. We've been blessed with great coaches, and at the same time, the coaches come and go because life is continuing to happen, and so we have it definitely has some turnover in our coaching staff, and we got 2 varsity assistants, Rick Peniston, who is a longtime coach down in the Madison area at East Troy and other schools down there, and he's been an awesome addition to our staff, and then Isaiah Warning, who's an Appleton West grad, who is been coaching here in the area for the last few years. And most recently with Appleton West, was a varsity assistant with Kimberly, and have gotten him on our staff this summer, and he's been an awesome addition. A lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm, and it's been really, really positive. So I feel great about our staff. I feel great about the coaches we have at our freshman and JV levels. And we work really hard to find good coaches in grades kindergarten through 8 as well. It's not easy because you got to find someone who's not in it for the money, who's not in it for themselves, just wants to make the program better, wants to follow the vision that we have for everything. And I wish we were paying them what their time is worth, and we're not. But I love those guys and appreciate all the work that they put in.
Yeah, very well said. Without an assistant coaching staff that's up to par, it definitely has an effect. It's a big deal, and it's not just about the head coach. You got to have a nice number of guys that are willing to step in and do the right thing for the kids and make your program successful. And obviously, you've done a very nice job of that. So, anyway, hey, we want to thank you for your time. We're going to catch up a lot this year. We have 15 Xavier games, audio and video. We're going to be doing a mixture of both this year on Sports Faith YouTube TV. So check us out there. But our first broadcast is going to be your opener at home. It'll be Kettle Moraine Lutheran, and that one will be Wednesday night. I think that's the 26th. It's the night before Thanksgiving. So nonetheless, we'll catch up with you then, Coach. Appreciate your time. Good luck this season, and we'll definitely talk to you on Wednesday before KML comes to town.
Yeah, that's just a few days away, Craig. That means I got a lot of things to do between now and Wednesday. But we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you for the time, and thanks for your coverage of Xavier basketball.
Absolutely. So that's head coach Matt Klarner from the Xavier Hawks visiting with us on our season preview, part of the Justapod podcast through Just a Game Fieldhouse. So appreciate his time this evening, and we'll catch up with you prior to that Kettle Moraine Lutheran game, of course, and further on down the season. So again, we've been talking with Matt Klarner from Xavier this afternoon on the Just a Game pod.